For more than 12,000 years, tobacco had already become part of human civilization before its dangers were seriously recognized. To uncover its origins, we must travel back to the Wishbone Archaeological in present-day Utah. Researchers discovered wild desert tobacco seeds preserved inside an ancient fire pit dating nearly 12,300 years. This remarkable finding confirms that tobacco was intentionally used long before agriculture, cities, or written history emerged. Among the indigenous peoples of the Americas, tobacco was regarded as a sacred plant rather than an everyday substance. It was believed to create a spiritual connection between humans, nature, and the unseen world. Shamans throughout the Peruvian and Ecuadorian Andes used it in ceremonies over 5,000 years ago. They believed the smoke carried prayers upward, that it could heal sickness, and that it connected the living with their ancestors. Around 8,000 years ago, communities began cultivating tobacco instead of relying solely on wild plants. They carefully selected stronger varieties and gradually improved the crop through early agricultural practices. Archaeological evidence shows tobacco became one of the first intentionally domesticated plants in the Americas, even before crops such as corn and squash.
By approximately 470 CE, the Maya civilization had transformed tobacco into an essential part of religious ceremonies and traditional healing.
Ancient temple carvings depict priests using ceremonial smoking tubes, while several Mayan deities were closely associated with tobacco. The Maya also believed the plant could relieve toothaches, treat snake bites, and even improve respiratory health.
As Mayan influence expanded toward the Mississippi Valley, their tobacco traditions spread among numerous indigenous communities across North America.
The Algonquian peoples honored tobacco as a sacred gift from the Great Spirit, while the Iroquois believed it originated from the head of Atahensik after her death. From the southern regions of the Americas to the northern lands of Canada, tobacco became deeply woven into indigenous spiritual beliefs, ceremonies, and cultural traditions.
Everything changed in 1492 when Christopher Columbus and his crew arrived in the Caribbean and encountered the Taino people.
Among the gifts they received were bundles of dried tobacco leaves, whose purpose Columbus failed to understand.
However, members of his expedition observed the Taino rolling the leaves into tubes and inhaling the smoke.
Two explorers, Rodrigo and Louis, experimented with tobacco while exploring Cuba.
After returning to Spain, Rodrigo shocked local people by exhaling smoke from his mouth and nose, leading many to believe he was possessed.
The Spanish Inquisition imprisoned him, but by the time he was released 7 years later, smoking had already become popular across Spain. The Spanish quickly recognized tobacco's commercial value and established large-scale cultivation throughout the Caribbean. In 1560, French diplomat Jean Nicot introduced tobacco seeds to the French royal court and promoted the plant as a remedy for various illnesses.
His influence became so significant that both the scientific name nicotina and the addictive compound nicotine were later named in his honor.
Following Columbus's voyage, tobacco spread across the known world with extraordinary speed, becoming one of history's fastest expanding agricultural commodities.
Portuguese sailors cultivated it at overseas trading posts, while Brazil emerged as a major commercial producer during the mid-1500s.
By the close of the 16th century, tobacco had reached nearly every region of Europe. From Europe, tobacco rapidly expanded into Africa, the Ottoman Empire, China, Japan, India, and Southeast Asia through international trade networks. Despite repeated attempts by rulers and governments to prohibit its use, its popularity continued to grow across different societies. Regardless of culture, religion, or political boundaries, tobacco successfully established a presence almost everywhere it arrived. Not everyone welcomed tobacco's growing influence. In 1604, King James I strongly condemned smoking. He called it a harmful and uncivilized habit. However, economic interests soon outweighed those concerns. Just 3 years later, English settlers arrived in Virginia, where tobacco would become the foundation of a thriving colonial economy. The Jamestown colony, established in 1607 by the Virginia Company of London, was intended to generate wealth for its investors, but instead faced catastrophe. Disease, famine, and conflict with the Powhatan Confederacy wiped out more than 80% of the settlers between 1607 and 1610.
Early attempts to profit from glassmaking, silk production, and vineyards all ended in failure.
Everything changed with the arrival of John Rolfe in 1610, after surviving nearly a year stranded in Bermuda following a shipwreck. As an experienced tobacco enthusiast, Rolfe understood the strong European demand for high-quality tobacco. The challenge was that Virginia's native Nicotiana rustica was too bitter, while Spain tightly controlled the superior Nicotiana tabacum seeds. Rolfe eventually obtained Nicotiana tabacum. Virginia's fertile soil and favorable climate produced smooth, mild tobacco. It quickly gained popularity across England. Exports soared from 20,000 pounds in 1617 to nearly 500,000 pounds annually by 1627, securing Jamestown's survival. Tobacco soon became Virginia's most valuable commodity and dominated every aspect of colonial life. It was cultivated in streets and even cemeteries, while also serving as a widely accepted form of currency. People paid taxes with tobacco, purchased goods through tobacco, and generous land grants encouraged more settlers to grow the profitable crop. Despite its immense value, tobacco cultivation demanded relentless labor throughout every stage of production, from planting to curing. The crop rapidly exhausted soil fertility, within only 3 to 4 growing seasons, forcing farmers to seek fresh land continuously. This expansion drove the seizure of indigenous territories and created an ever-growing demand for additional workers. Initially, Virginia depended on indentured servants from England, who exchanged years of labor for passage across the Atlantic. However, this workforce remained temporary and increasingly insufficient, as many eventually gained their freedom. Beginning in 1619, after the arrival of about 20 enslaved Africans at Point Comfort, plantation owners increasingly turned to enslaved labor to sustain the expanding tobacco economy. Tobacco did far more than strengthen colonial Virginia's economy. It created the financial foundation for the system of chattel slavery that shaped American history for centuries. By the time of the American Revolution, Virginia had become the wealthiest and most populated of the 13 colonies. Much of that prosperity was generated through tobacco cultivated by enslaved African labor. Tobacco's influence expanded far beyond North America, becoming a major force in global trade and government finance.
In England, tobacco taxes generated significant state revenue, while in Africa the crop became closely linked to the transatlantic slave trade through commercial exchange.
For nearly 2 centuries, tobacco remained a luxury commodity, consumed mainly through pipes, cigars, chewing tobacco, and snuff. Although cigarettes already existed, they were hand-rolled, costly, and produced in limited numbers, making them far less common than other tobacco products.
Even after the Crimean War, when the habit spread through returning soldiers, slow production kept cigarettes from becoming a mass-market product.
Everything changed in 1875, when Allen & Ginter, a tobacco company in Richmond, Virginia, announced a $75,000 reward for a machine capable of manufacturing cigarettes efficiently. A determined 18-year-old James Albert Bonsack, son of a Virginia textile mill owner, accepted the challenge. Using borrowed money and support from his grandmother, He left college and began developing his revolutionary invention. By 1880, Bonsack completed a working cigarette-making machine, but the original prototype was destroyed in a fire. Undeterred, he built an improved version and secured a patent for the design. The machine produced nearly 120,000 cigarettes in 10 hours, matching the output of about 40 skilled hand rollers. Despite sponsoring the competition, Allen and Ginter refused to adopt Bonsack's invention after seeing the finished machine. Company executives feared customers would reject machine-made cigarettes in favor of handcrafted products. They also avoided awarding the promised $75,000 prize, leaving Bonsack's breakthrough without immediate commercial success. In 1884, James Buchanan Duke secured an exclusive agreement with James Bonsack, obtaining his cigarette-making machines at a 25% lower cost than any competitor.
He installed 4 machines in a New York factory, where the city's growing immigrant workforce created enormous demand for inexpensive, quickly consumed cigarettes.
This strategic partnership transformed cigarette manufacturing into a highly efficient industrial business. The Bonsack machines dramatically reduced production costs, cutting labor expenses for 1,000 cigarettes from about 96 cents to nearly 8 cents by 1895. Duke invested these savings into nationwide advertising campaigns, promotional coupons, and brand marketing. By 1889, he had become America's largest cigarette manufacturer, and in 1890 he formed the American Tobacco Company, controlling nearly 90% of the market. The dominance of the American Tobacco Company eventually attracted government scrutiny under federal antitrust laws. In 1911, the U.S. Supreme Court ordered the company to be divided into several independent businesses. Those successor companies, including R.J. Reynolds, Liggett & Myers, Lorillard, Philip Morris, and Brown & Williamson, dominate the tobacco industry throughout the 20th century. During World War I, cigarettes became an essential part of military life after being included in soldiers' daily rations. General John Pershing reportedly emphasized that tobacco was as important as food and ammunition for troop morale. Compact, convenient, and easy to smoke during brief breaks, cigarettes proved especially practical in trench warfare. The same pattern expanded during World War II, when President Franklin D. Roosevelt declared tobacco an essential wartime crop, and cigarette companies supplied free packs to soldiers. For millions of servicemen, smoking became closely associated with stress relief, survival, and military companionship. After the wars, smoking became deeply embedded in everyday culture, marking the beginning of tobacco's post-war golden age.
Hollywood films, celebrity endorsements, and even advertisements featuring physicians helped portray cigarettes as fashionable, sophisticated, and socially desirable.
Backed by massive marketing campaigns, the tobacco industry linked smoking with independence, confidence, rebellion, and modern lifestyle, making public criticism rebellion increasingly uncommon.
The growth of cigarettes' consumptions was extraordinary. At that point, its dominance appeared almost impossible to challenge.
In 1900, the average American smoked only 54 cigarettes each year. But by 1963, that figure had surged to 4,345 cigarettes per person annually. Everything changed during the early 1950s, when 2 landmark scientific investigations produced compelling evidence against smoking. Ernest Windar and Everett Graham demonstrated a direct relationship between cigarettes and lung cancer, while Richard Doll and Austin Bradford launched the British Doctors Study, involving more than 40,000 physicians. The findings consistently confirmed the serious health risks associated with smoking. Rather than accepting these conclusions, the tobacco industry's leading executives gathered at New York's Plaza Hotel in 1953 to coordinate their response. Working with the public relations firm Hill & Knowlton, they designed one of the most influential corporate communication campaigns in modern history. Their objective was to protect the industry's reputation and preserve consumer confidence. Instead of claiming cigarettes were harmless, the industry focused on creating uncertainty around the scientific evidence. It established the Tobacco Industry Research Committee, later renamed the Council for Tobacco Research, to finance studies that questioned established findings and prolonged public debate. Even as internal research supported the health risks, the industry continued presenting the evidence as inconclusive. Documents released years later revealed that tobacco companies had long understood the addictive nature of nicotine and its connection to cancer. Despite this knowledge, critical findings were concealed, while extensive marketing campaigns continued to attract new consumers, including young people. These internal records exposed one of the most significant examples of corporate deception in modern public health history. On January 11, 1964, U.S. Surgeon General Luther Terry landmarked Smoking and Health Report, deliberately announcing it on a Saturday to avoid immediate stock market disruption. Concluded that smoking directly caused lung cancer in men, significantly increased heart disease, chronic bronchitis, and emphysema. During the peak of tobacco's history, smokers faced a 70% higher risk of fatal heart attacks when 42% of American adults still smoked. Although the report transformed public awareness, it failed to bring the tobacco industry to a halt. Instead, tobacco companies continued expanding their influence while preparing new strategies to protect their business.
Despite these regulations, tobacco companies intensified lobbying efforts, targeted women and minority communities, expanded into developing nations,
and successfully defended lawsuits by arguing smokers accepted the known risks. During the 1990s, leaked internal documents exposed confidential research, strategic plans, company memos proving tobacco executives had long known nicotine was addictive and smoking caused cancer. The records also revealed deliberate campaigns targeting children and teenagers, while publicly promoting scientific uncertainty to protect industry profits. State attorneys general, led by Mississippi Attorney General Mike Moore, launched lawsuits seeking compensation for billions spent treating smoking-related illnesses through Medicaid. Their central argument was straightforward. Tobacco companies had created the public health crisis and should bear the financial responsibility. According to the World Health Organization, tobacco causes more than 8 million deaths every year, exceeding the combined global deaths from HIV, malaria, and tuberculosis. Despite decades of scientific evidence, tobacco remains one of the leading preventable causes of death across the United States and much of the developed world. A plant once regarded as sacred by indigenous peoples gradually became a symbol of colonial exploitation, industrial expansion, and widespread nicotine addiction. Despite scientific discoveries, legal settlements, and decades of public health campaigns, the tobacco industry repeatedly adapted its strategies, raising ongoing concerns about whether history is repeating itself.
If you found this documentary informative, consider subscribing so you don't miss future history documentaries and deep dive stories.